absolutely. So welcome. For those of you, I think pretty much all of you guys that are here today have been in this space before. But before I introduce our monthly speaker, I want to just give you a couple of housekeeping. Again, we meet every month and we have a wonderful, phenomenal speaker every month that imparts their expertise, their experience, their, strength and their support to this space, right? In the space of unlocking higher education. And this is access to education for individuals who are currently incarcerated, individuals who are coming in their reentry journey, all space of access for the purpose of education and including workforce development, which is something that we have been also focusing a lot on, just so that we continue that journey, right? That journey of excelling in your education purposes, but also for that mentality of career placement. And in addition to that, I want to just let you guys know before I get into it that next month we're going to be hosting our celebration as far as our end of year meeting. It will be held on December 15th instead of the last Friday of the month. So be on the lookout for that particular invite. And it's a recap of what we've been able to accomplish this year. I'm super excited that one of the highlights that we've been able to accomplish is incorporate our CWAC, as we fondly call it, but is our State Education and Workforce Development Collaborative. And we have some very enthusiastic but also phenomenal individuals in this cohort happening right now. And so I am excited that we're going to be exploring the levels of opportunities that lie within the states, but also how we can support their work, their movement, and their access to resources when it comes to education. And with that, we usually host the first about 10 minutes to introductions when it comes to breakout rooms. We have a few here today, and I think maybe what we can do is just popcorn it, and so that we can talk about the work that we're doing. We can say where we are calling from, and what are we involved in as far as the higher education portion, what brings us to this particular space. So I go first. I'll open up that little space here. So I'm Judith McGrone. I am the policy team lead for Prison to Professionals and Unlock Higher Education. I am a cohort past participant and graduate, so I can attest to the great work that this organization has been able to do. And also I come to this space because I am a justice impacted individual. And I know the benefits that having access to education or having an educational level on the inside provided for me. It gave me resources, it gave me opportunities, it opened doors with staff, and it made definitely my incarcerated life a lot easier. And so I was uniquely placed in many situations. And so I saw the additional burden that individuals that didn't have that education component, that didn't have those resources, that didn't have that opportunities, suffered. So it's not just the incarcerated part, but lacking those resources and opportunities that even made it a more confounding, negative space to be in. And so my goal as I've been home has been to always be that bridge to provide resources, opportunities for individuals who have been incarcerated and individuals who are currently incarcerated. And that's my story. And I'll pass it on to Dr. Andres. See you.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Sorry, turn my camera on. I am currently from Murfreesboro, Illinois, so our connection is a little rough here, but usually I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, traveling for the holidays. So let me know if my connection goes bad. That's why I mentioned that. But Stanley Andres, I'm the executive director of Prison to Professionals. As Judith was just mentioning, we are the fiscal sponsors of Unlock Higher Ed. justice impacted. I've been working with P2P for 8 years now to support currently and formerly incarcerated individuals in their pursuit of higher education. Also, a faculty member at Howard University College of Medicine. Thank you. I will popcorn Nikki.
Oh no, I'm going to get to be allowed to talk today. I love this for me. I'm sure almost everyone knows I am Mickey. I like to be behind the scenes all the time and working on different things that we're doing. I am the media and messaging chair on loan from prison cells to PhD. And it is always my privilege to work on our YouTube channel, to do our Spotify, to do our Apple podcast, to do our socials, our reels, and help out with building and featuring this speaker series. And I really appreciate seeing you guys all here. And with that, I will popcorn over to Marianne.
Hi, I'm Marianne Gibson, and I'm actually a recipient of support of Judith and Dr. Stan and Mickey. I was a cohort graduate of P2P, and I'm currently in the Ladies of Hope Ministry cohort, which I'm really enjoying, and I'm finishing a semester at St. Leo University studying criminal law, which was encouraged by all of this higher education prompt. I'm formally, or I am justice impacted, and they gave me the hope and inspiration to pursue some exciting things to help other women too, others, not just women, but everyone that's been impacted by the justice system. So I'm a recipient and grateful. Thank you. Let's see. Would it be all right if I popcorn to Paul? Or Judith, do you have another suggestion?
Let's popcorn it to Norma. I'd love
Norma.
to Paul.
Okay, I apologize. I couldn't see everyone. Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Norma.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Good afternoon. I'm Norma. I am the Community Engagement Manager for Western Mass Corps. And we do pathways to education behind the walls and once they get home. I am also a former student of Western Mass Corps. And, I do what I do because, well, first of all, I didn't fully educate myself until I got behind the wall, but it changed my life, and so when I go behind the wall, I just have so much enthusiastic by telling them, guys, take the classes, take what they're offering you behind the wall, because it does make a big difference when you come home. It just it as we know, data shows education helps financially, spiritually, all of it, better places to live, better opportunities. So, yeah. And so I think I don't understand how me and Nicole always get this. She's the executive director. And then I sometimes get it, but I think I picked this one up for her. So, yeah.
And then
Thank
we have,
you.
thank you, Norma,
Mm-hmm.
for sharing that. We have, I think we have Dr. Tasha Taylor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha Taylor. I live in Kansas. I'm the AVP of Academic Affairs at Cowley College, and I am responsible for our PEP program, Prison Education Program. We offer GED classes inside Winfield Correctional Facility, as well as several trade programs, which are welding, electromechanical maintenance, and construction technology. So we are just looking to grow our programs, as well as ensure that we always have the support services necessary for the population. And I think that means Paul is last.
Yes, that is Paul. And I'm gonna officially introduce Paul, being that he is our guest speaker today, and I have this great, opportunity to read his bio. But also I just want to thank you for being here, being part of this conversation, and I'm super excited and grateful that you're imparting your knowledge, your skills, and expertise onto this group and going onto our YouTube channel, which has been, as Mickey always, graciously and happily states, is growing exponentially. So today we have the pleasure of introducing Paul Rothschild. Dr. Rothschild is coming from Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments. Paul Rothschild joined ENDPP as Managing Director of Operations on May 5th of 2023. Following years of experience dedicated to volunteer services with organizations such as the Fully Free Campaign, the Illinois Alliance for Reentry, Justice, and the People's Coalition for Safety and Freedom. Paul brings a robust background from corporate sector, I can attest to that, where he has held key leadership roles in business operations, IT, finance, HR, across a range of organizations, from small enterprises to publicly traded companies. His personal experience of serving a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence in federal prison also provides him with invaluable insights into the challenges of reentry and reintegration. Paul's commitment to social justice was sparked with his firsthand observation of the disproportionate impact of incarceration on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as his awareness of the privileges that influence reentry and the restoration of rights. His passion and expertise uniquely position him to help ENDDP streamline operations, professionalize processes, and prepare for future growth. In addition to his leadership, Paul played a key strategic and communications role in the successful passage of Clean Slate in Illinois on October 30th of 2025. I highlight that. That's awesome. They've done some awesome work. Can't wait. And a historic law that will automate records clearance for more than 1.7 million people across the state. He is also an associate producer of the forthcoming documentary Civil Death, and the creator and executive producer of the Movement Mixtape Volume 1, releasing on November 15th. Just released. Paul is a certified nonprofit professional and a member of the Just Leadership Leading with Conviction 2024. He has awarded the Canary Impact Prize for his proposal to create a movement mixtape featuring all formerly incarcerated artists, and serves as a co-chair of the Public Narrative Committee for the Justice 2020 project. So it's just the accolades, but more importantly, the impact that you have been able to be part of and achieve in this space. And just to point it out there, I'm coming from Florida. I am waiting for Clean Slate to do some good work down here. I know that, Sheena and Desmond have been working really hard, and I just hope to be in that same situation where you're coming now with Illinois. So Paul, I'll hand you the floor so you can tell us more about all that great work that you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you so much, Judith, and thank you, Mickey, and everyone involved. I do want to make one correction. I think you ad-libbed one thing in the bio. I am not a doctor, so I certainly want to make sure that that is not, that misconception is cleared up. So I'll tell you just a little bit about my story, and then my organization and Clean Slate, and specifically how that relates to higher ed and workforce development. So as Judith said, my name is Paul Rothschild. I use he, him pronouns. I grew up in the Chicago area, upper middle class, very privileged, suburban upbringing. Lived in Chicago my whole life except for my adventures in federal prison, where they routed me all over the country for many times no good reason. So I had about a 20-year career in the business world, working primarily in information technology, but IT runs everything. So that got me involved in operations and HR and then eventually finance. I became a certified public bookkeeper to kind of round out my finance skills. And professionally, everything was going great. Personally, not so great. Some of my personal problems were spiraling out of control, and I ended up crossing state lines to commit a felony, which is a sting operation often set up by the federal law enforcement. They take a crime that would be a state level crime, and if they can lure you across state lines to commit it, they now have a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence, no matter what the crime was, just because you crossed state lines. So I'm one of the thousands of people a year that are caught up in that sting, and I ended up serving a 10-year mandatory minimum. In federal prison, you serve 85% if you can keep all your good time. So I did just about 8.5 years. It was not smooth, it was not easy, but somehow I managed to keep all my good time and get out right at that 85% mark. I learned a lot while I was incarcerated and changed a lot. My values really shifted. And I want to emphasize that that had nothing at all to do with the system itself or any programming or resources that were made available by the system. All of my internal work and change was sparked by people that I was incarcerated with who were positive influences on me and gave me the support and resources that I needed to grow. So, huge kudos to all the people who are incarcerated supporting each other. We are all we got, right? That is really, those are the resources that lead to positive outcomes from the carceral system. It is not anything in the carceral system itself that leads to the positive income or positive outcomes. So I was released from federal prison in June of 2020, just about 5.5 years ago. If you think back to June of 2020, we were about 3 months into the officially declared pandemic from COVID. Kind of a weird time to be released from prison. I think of it as a really good time. I think the kind of the ramp from the existence in prison and how our nervous systems adjust to that environment versus the incredible shift when we leave prison and the changes that we need to implement in our own nervous system management in order to like be functional. I think that it's a bigger problem for most than it was for me because leaving in June of 2020, there was nobody on the streets. Everybody was at home. Everything was very quiet. So that was actually kind of a good time, I think, to leave prison. And maybe there's some lessons there about transitioning out of prison and being very intentional about our kind of our nervous systems and the amount of stimulus and the amount of choice that we are presented when we first leave prison. I found that to be very overwhelming. I remember the day I was released going for a walk and crying at an intersection when I realized that I could turn left or turn right or go straight or go home or sit down and nobody would yell at me and tell me that I was doing the wrong thing or threaten me with repercussions. And so, like, that little bit of freedom was enough to bring some tears. And then I think later in the day, I went to the grocery store, and then it was really very shocking. I think at the time there was like 4 people were allowed in the store at a time and had to be fully masked kind of situation. But still, just seeing the choices after being so limited for that 8.5 year period could have been really overwhelming. But having the resources that I did and the quiet of the pandemic, I think really helped that transition. I definitely experienced what it's like to be privileged and resource rich when leaving prison. I was picked up by my mom. I was given a place to stay in my parents' house that I had grown up in. And I had room to have a bedroom of my own, a bathroom of my own, an office of my own. I took the basement and turned it into a workout room and a meditation room. And like I had an amazing set of resources available. I had to go to the DMV in Illinois 5 times before I could get my driver's license. And I think about like I had someone who drove me 5 times and waited for me. And if I had not had resources like that, my ability to just do the basic things that I needed to do, like get a driver's license, open a bank account, the things that I would need to do even, before I started really looking for a job, um, my privilege was just woven throughout my experience of reentry in ways that I saw a little bit then, but I see a lot more now. In the position I'm in now, I see thousands of people coming home from incarceration in their first couple of years, and I see the struggles and the lack of resources they have available. And it really reaffirms this value and this mission that I have to add some equity to the system, right? There are so many privileges that could have and should have helped me not go to prison, and yet I did. But yet those privileges when I got out were still there, still persisted, and they persist to this day, right? I feel very lucky and privileged to do the work I do, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I also have the freedom to leave that work, and I could go back to the corporate world. And it might not be easy, like my record is not clear. There would be a lot of barriers. But for me, as compared to somebody, a person of color, or a person from a background of poverty, or especially where those two things intersect, like the ability to leave this intentional values-based work of social justice and go back to the corporate world was really not an option for many. So one of the things that I do is try to really embody and remember that sense of privilege and how it permeates everything. And I have a group that, several groups that I belong to, community groups, lots of discussion. But one of the conversations recently was about the ability to pass, right? And that phrase, like the ability to pass, in my experience, comes from kind of the post-slave era, where folks who had lighter skin had the opportunity to, pose or pass as people who were not of color and did not have African ancestry in their background, and they could make their way in the world with privilege that others could not. Well, I think that that similar phenomenon occurs today with folks who can present themselves as educated, present themselves as professional, or present themselves as being white. And they have, especially when those things intersect, right? They have the ability to present themselves in a way where they're not thought of as being formally incarcerated, or they're at least not defined by that experience in a way that many others are. So the work that I do now, I was very privileged about 2.5 years ago. I had really kind of had my fill of the for-profit world. When I first was released from incarceration, the United States Probation Office had really pushed me to go back to the for-profit world and kind of the world of tech and finance, as if like that would be an easy path for me because that had been my previous experience. And I did find a job. So within 3 months of being released, I was hired by a privately owned company that owns multiple healthcare providing locations in Chicago. And I would work on the back end and the back office to maximize their profits while making sure that they could get away with providing the worst possible care without having to reduce their reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid. So like balancing what's the least care we can give with the most profit. And it felt like going to work every day was like causing a moral injury. And I would sort of offset that by showing up where people were organizing around social justice on evenings or weekends. That was how I found out about the Fully Free campaign. And that was how I met most of the folks who I still work with today, was just by showing up at those events. And I think, I showed up as a presenting as a white male professional. And I think that there was probably some skepticism initially, but I was quick to identify myself as somebody who was formerly incarcerated. And the main thing was I kept showing up, right? I didn't just come to one event. I kept showing up. And I now have this theory that if you just keep showing up to do the work you want to do, eventually someone will start paying you to do it. So a big encouragement here on volunteering for anyone who is not already. If there's a space you want to be in, just start showing up in that space and being positive and transparent. And often that's a great way to find a role in that space if you have that curse of competence. The organization that I joined is the new home of the Fully Free campaign and Clean Slate Illinois, and that is the Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments. It's a really long name, so we use endpp.org for short. That also will redirect folks to our website. And this is an organization founded by our executive director, Marlon Chamberlain, who at the time was the Fully Free campaign manager at the Heartland Alliance, which was the massive global 100-year-old nonprofit in Chicago. And due to several considerations, Marlon had this urge to create a new home for the Fully Free campaign that was truly led by and centering the voices of those who were formerly incarcerated in the decision making and in the work, and at the same time able to join the Clean Slate Illinois steering committee with that organization. So those are our two major external facing campaigns. In order to support those campaigns, we also do a lot of narrative and communications work. And I'm happy to see that we're delving even deeper into kind of the cultural work of integrating art and creative expression with healing and narrative change around people that are formerly incarcerated. And so one of our little projects, Clean Slate Illinois, depending on who you talk to, 6 years, 5 years, maybe 4 years of struggle to get a bill language, to get support. And then the last thing was to get the political will to actually bring it to vote. And there was an incredible amount of work, numerous steering committee organizations, and so lots of coalition management there. We had to manage multiple base building orgs working on the same campaign together and communicating through social media. So there are a few spots there where we had to work out some challenges on how do we connect the people in who are responding to the right organization? How do we share data equitably? When we use like a billboard tactic, whose QR code goes on the billboard and where does it lead? We had to work through a lot of these like coalition questions. And we had the opportunity, our org in particular, to really expand our digital organizing and grassroots organizing and the way those two integrate. We did work at the national level with FIC PFM, which I'm going to attempt to say the acronym, but I'm going to probably blow it. Formerly incarcerated and convicted people and families movement. Almost got it perfect. With FIC PFM, we participated at the national level in some grassroots and digital advocacy work. And we got to see some of the digital tools that they were using at the national level for organizing and communicating and moving to action a base. And we built a similar stack of tools and really implemented and refined it at the state level. And I give that stack of technology huge credit for our ability to pass Clean Slate. So I'm happy to get more into the details about the tech stack and the tools that we used and how those turned into things like generating 1,000 witness slips for a hearing in less than 15 hours. We don't keep records on that kind of thing in the state of Illinois, but we think that we might have hit a record there. And just the incredible leverage that we were able to have to move thousands or tens of thousands of actions with a team of 7 people. So really using old school grassroots organizing principles in conjunction with the newest forms of digital organizing and social media activation. So really excited to see, we plan next year in 26. We have a chapter model, so we have fully free chapters around the state of Illinois, and we're excited to look for local campaigns in 26 and set that same stack of tools loose on local issues, because what we think of as permanent punishments exist at the national level, the state level, and local. And so we're excited to see the chapters identify local barriers and start addressing those. Let me back up just a minute and talk about permanent punishments, and then I'll pause for some questions and discussion. There's a phrase that's often used, collateral consequences, and it refers to the web of legal barriers, policy, and regulations that create barriers to education, employment, housing, civic engagement, healthcare, and more across the country for people with arrest and conviction records. We believe that the term collateral consequences makes it sound like an accident, like an oops, and that's not the case. This web of barriers was created very intentionally to extend the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, new Jim Crow. This is the new Jim Crow, is the permanent punishments. So we use that phrase, permanent punishments. We believe it's much more clear in indicating why these barriers exist and that the nature of the barriers is a punishment. So often when courts have to rule on the legality of these types of barriers, they say, oh, well, it's not a punishment, it's regulatory, and therefore it's constitutional. But we think that taken in sum total, when you look across the spectrum of these barriers, that it becomes very clear that this is a web of punishments that continues for life. So we all know that over 90% of people accept pleas when they are part of the criminal legal system. And there's a covenant in that plea that says,
No appeal.
yeah, there's a covenant that we agree to that says these are going to be your punishments. And when you have served all of your punishments, you'll be free again. And that is not being held up. There is no freedom at the end of the punishments. The permanent punishment barriers have been erected. In Illinois, there's over 1,300. And when we eliminate duplicates and kind of boil it down, we find about 1,000 barriers that we have in a database that we use as our legislative research tool. And so at the Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments, we identify pathways to remove these barriers. If we do it through the Fully Free campaign, that means that we are creating a new law or a new policy which will remove a barrier. And another approach, what we did with Clean Slate, is if we can't remove the barriers, let's remove the records. So multiple approaches, and those two are not the only two. For example, there are a couple of good laws in Illinois, including there's a Just Housing Amendment that covers Cook County, the home of Chicago, the most populous area in the state. And we have some really good ban the box laws that were passed around 2015, 2016. But there's an issue of public education around what their rights are, as well as what are their remedies if they feel like the Just Housing Amendment or ban the box have been violated. So there's a couple of different ways we could have approached this problem. But what we did is we traced what's the remedy. And we found that in the end, the remedy is the Illinois Department of Human Rights that has a complaint system where you can file indicating somebody has not followed the Just Housing Amendment or ban the box. We co-developed a Know Your Rights training with the Illinois Department of Human Rights, and we then delivered it with them in a hybrid format. And that presentation is now being distributed and delivered across the state of Illinois, educating folks. Because when we asked them how many remedies were filed in the last year, the answer was not zero, Marianne, but it was 39.
Yeah.
So in a state with over 13 million people in it, including potentially as many as 4 million with criminal records, there's a claim that only 39 people had their rights violated. So obviously this is a situation where there may not, the barrier, there's been a really good attempt to remove barriers, but the knowledge and the enforcement of those barriers were not communicated. So a lot of the work we do is around education and access to the remedies. I think I could probably pause there and see if there's any questions or discussion.
I have tons of questions.
Sure, let's go.
But for the sake of time, I'm just going to bring it down to one. You mentioned that the you're going to the Department of Human Rights and to find out about the how many have filed. And so you think that more importantly is the education of people having access to those filings and the resources or knowing how to. How do you see that as a model to ensure that all states are really reflecting, the claims that should be reflected?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that more about like the approach that we take with agencies when we talk to them, of being calling people in, not calling them out. So like when we identified that this is where the remedy sat, we could have organized a social media campaign to what's called blame and shame. And we could have pointed fingers at IDHR and said that they weren't doing their jobs and that it was their fault and that they need to fix things. But instead, we took a collaborative approach, a solutions-based approach, and asked them for a meeting, explained what we were hearing anecdotally, and asked them what data they had. It turned into an interactive, multi-meeting conversation. And in collaboration, we agreed that folks needed to be educated and made aware of the resources available. And so I think everything is going to be state by state. There's so many state level rules, and some of them are even, more municipal, more local than that. But I think it's the approach of understanding that systems and departments in and of themselves are not evil. For the most part, people working in these systems are beautiful people with hearts of gold who just are anxious for opportunities to help. And often it's just the systems themselves that the cruelty is baked in often because of like misunderstandings, or it's based on like one story of something that happened once and yet is overly broad and is punishing, tens of thousands of other people. So going in with the assumption that like people are good, first of all, and then looking for opportunities to collaborate and partner on producing solutions rather than focusing on the problems. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, Judith. I don't think there's a good answer for how to make that uniform, but I do think that that approach of being collaborative and open and always just giving people the opportunity, the benefit of the doubt that like given a path to make things better, that they will. And that includes folks at all different kinds of systems and agencies, including Department of Correction staff themselves.
I'll have one more question if nobody else has one. Um, you also mentioned that you guys moved on from removing the actual barriers to removing the record. At what point did you see that that was more feasible and more, I guess, impactful in a sense than just a specific barrier, and how much of a success that has been for different states? Like, I would love to see that happen more sooner than later, because I think it on a blanket perspective, removing the record alleviates a lot of the barriers that a lot of people sometimes are focusing on. And then they take one step forward and then there's another barrier and another barrier to really achieve that, ultimate goal of really, really being free, if that's even possible.
Yeah, it's a great question, Judith. Thank you. I would say that like our primary vision is the end of the permanent punishments. So removing the barriers is our mission. We, in the meantime, will not forsake other paths that may provide similar benefits or relief. And so for us, clean slate was a very obvious way to hit a tremendous amount of people in one shot, as well as it was a campaign that was well resourced. We had the support of a national organization, incredible resources and support that they provided that really made that possible. And we see our wins as incremental to the ultimate goal of building a permanent, sustainable power base made up of those who are directly impacted by the system. We are very lucky in Illinois that if you have left incarceration, you can vote. So anyone who is not currently incarcerated in the state can vote, whether they're on probation, supervision, parole, does not matter. And it is potentially the most powerful group of people in the state, and yet has never been organized in that fashion around social justice issues. So our ultimate goal, Judith, is really the building of the permanent power base for those communities who were most directly destroyed by the mass incarceration policies starting in the 90s, like the 94 crime bill. These same communities that are just devastated today, decades later, are our power base. And let's be clear, this is not just the west side and south side of Chicago. This is across the state of Illinois. I heard that Dr. Stan is down in Murfreesboro, which is down in Jackson County. Like if he goes into a diner down in Murfreesboro and asks people whether criminal records are interfering with the community's ability to thrive and be successful, he'll hear what we heard in Atlanta, Illinois, which is not far from there. We were in a diner and got into this conversation with basically everybody in the diner because we were all wearing fully free shirts. And what they said was, especially with the opiate crisis spreading out across the state, that like 50% of the adults have criminal records now. And for Atlanta, Illinois, there's basically 3 companies that do the hiring. There's like 3 jobs, job sources, and all of them do not hire people with criminal records. So we're talking about mass devastation across rural and white parts of the state.
Yep.
And so these issues of criminal records, which were originally built as a way to further target and marginalize minorities, have now spread and broadened to basically include anyone who is not in a privileged class. So it's no longer about race exclusively, and it's no longer about geography exclusively. Because of the broad overreach of these systems, it's now it's the most equitable system we have. It's now locking people up from all over. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Stam.
Yes, thank you for that. This is kind of more on a personal level question. Do you know, I'm looking for some support out here in Jackson County for like legal assistance. I mean, so you work here in the state. Are you familiar with organizations or people that provide legal assistance to the need that, I mean, either at pro bono or at, supportive cost?
Yes, and your audio was a little choppy there, but I think I got the gist of the question. So yes, we organize statewide. We have a chapter model and we have a regional model. So we have a Southern Illinois regional coordinator who is located in East St. Louis area, what we call Metro East, which Murfreesboro is a part of. And we believe that in the meantime, while we are waiting for Clean Slate to be enacted, we're going to continue to work on record clearance. So we are not a direct services agency, but we are a coalition, and we are in coalition with a number of legal aid providers. And we have been running sealing and expungement summits or events, record clearance events across the state. We have not run one in Jackson County, I think, since maybe 23. I'd have to double check. But that is something that we are definitely working on developing. I think that if you have folks in Murfreesboro in that area and you have them go to our website and fill out like a chapter interest form, the fully free. Yeah, I will definitely give you a contact person, and that will be Stephanie Taylor, who is wonderful. She's our Southern Illinois Regional Coordinator. And these folks could definitely like join our chapter model for Metro East. If there's enough folks, it might be big enough to have their own chapter. Um, Excellent. Uh, yes, I'm from the LWC cohort. Exactly. Not Stephanie. Yes, I will have that form filled out. I'll give you a link to that form as well. And Mary Ann, want to ask your question while I find this link?
Sure. Paul, first of all, thank you very much for your work. I neglected to say at my introduction, I am actually in Chicago. So, and I have not heard of the work or the clean slate, and I apologize that I'm not familiar with it, but it's an amazing program. I just wanted to say I had an experience with I guess it was the ban the box, kind of the Illinois human rights law that had gone into effect. And I had a situation where I was actually referred for a job very early on by a close friend. So I had an into a job, went through a whole interview at a major one of the major insurance companies here in Chicago. And halfway through the interview, I offered that, because I had a big gap in my resume. It was an executive position. You have to kind of say where you're at for 5 years. And the person that interviewed me got completely spooked and dropped the interview. Like literally, they couldn't get off quick enough. And I had a referral almost a complete end. So afterwards, I started to investigate and I went to the website and I looked at the form and I looked at the thought of filing. So back to your point is, even if people are aware of it, I had a fear of filing because I was still under supervision, under federal supervision. I didn't want to be labeled as someone that was going to file an action against an employer because I was an entrepreneur. I had hundreds of employees and, I had lived on the other side of that. And so, I didn't want to embarrass the people that had recommended me for the position either, and so, but I wanted to thank you for the work and I'll connect in to figure out how I might be able to help from my position, but thank you.
That's great. Mary Ann, where in Chicago are you? What neighborhood?
We live in Addison.
Okay.
Out in the suburbs, and but I'm heading to Florida for like 4 months at the beginning of the year, which is where we used to live as well. So I'm kind of new to Chicago. I say new. I was released from Greenville to Chicago, and I live here with my husband. But
amazing. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to
thank
connecting
you.
further. I will say, like the ban the box law is pretty good. It's written pretty well. But employers have done a masterful job of figuring out how to skirt it. And also, like what Mary Ann was talking about, like I think that folks with backgrounds who go through good training in cohorts are often taught to literally, in the case of JLUSA, to lead with conviction and to like be really transparent. However, the ban the box law assumes that that transparency will not be there. The way it works is they are not allowed to ask you about any criminal background until they have made a job offer, and only then can they make it conditional on a background check. And so I think that folks like you, Marianne, and like me, that was my training as well, who really want to lead with that conversation,
Right.
Often find that we have like eliminated really our remedy because we have not followed that pattern, which has made that we've created now a loophole for the company not to have to follow the process. And so for me, like, I don't really like the way it has ended up being implemented because for someone to make you a job offer and then do the background check and then say, well, okay, we'll still hire you for this, to me is like they're like doing you a favor, right? We're going to hire you in spite of your background, Whereas one of the beauties and joys of doing social justice work is being hired because of your background rather than in spite of it.
Right.
So it becomes a point of pride rather than something to be ashamed of or fearful that people are going to find out at work and that things are going to go off the rails there.
That's my feeling too, is I'd rather offer it as an asset. And I haven't been hired yet, but my point is but I understand what you're saying is that sort of uh gives them an out
It
when
does.
people lead with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely. Norman, did you have your hand up?
I did. You're just like, I'm just like, yes, and you, yes, and yes, yes. But Paul, I wanted to tell you that clean slate law out here in Massachusetts, we're killing it. It is real. It is a movement out here. And yes, we is doing well out here. We're doing the 7 year just to automatically wipe out Corey, 7 years, the felon, and the 3 year on a misdemeanor. So that's what we're
Amazing.
fighting for out here now. Yeah, several big organizations actually
Mhm.
core Western Mass core, because I work with formerly incarcerated. So we've been like trying to get our students together so we can get our billboard and put it up on a poster sign. But I just wanted to
Amazing.
tell y'all that. And the
Y'all
other
got a
thing
little
was
y'all got a little something else going on in Massachusetts as well.
we well, I just last Wednesday I testified in front of Congress for treatment instead of incarceration. So
Nice.
we do have a lot going on
What
here.
what if I said the name Andrea James?
Andrea James.
Andrea James is the executive director for the National Council, I think National Council of Women and Girls, something like that. And she is running for governor of Massachusetts as a formerly incarcerated woman and an attorney.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Reach out.
That
Get
is
on that train.
so
Reach out.
awesome.
Andrea
Really?
James. Yep.
Okay, I wrote that down for governor. Um, oh my God. Wow. That is so awesome.
Yeah. You familiar with the Free Her movement?
Yeah, that's right. So you know what was so beautiful about it? Because I just got out in 2022 and I remember they were there for me. So I just did it this year with them. And it was just amazing. Due to the fact that half the women that I was incarcerated with had life sentences.
Yeah.
And the free her, like when we did the free her march, two of them had gotten out. So
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So you know what, Paul, is this, my hands just been in a little bit of everything. I have my job, but personal things to me like free her, clean slate, that were my own personal. So
Nice.
you know what I'm saying? But you know what, it ties with my job
Yeah.
anyways. That's the blessing.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, it really is a blessing. I work for the college and they wanted somebody formerly incarcerated, but they was like, she has a record. And the way my professors and them fought for me said, well, who do you think you're going to get? You want a formerly incarcerated.
Right.
Do you think people are not going to have a record? Like, so it's like, um, it's, yeah, yep.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because I think that was one tie-in that we really wanted to hit today was why clean slate and higher ed are so tied together.
Hmm.
So we're in a relationship with a number of universities and colleges in the state. And, I have now been educated on the fact that universities and colleges, even those with criminal justice programs, may not have open enrollment policies for people with criminal records. Like they are legally entitled, allowed to discriminate
Right.
against criminal records in access
Yeah,
to higher ed, and even within the school. So like
yes.
um, so like
Hmm.
one university I won't name who has different schools, right? Like their social work school welcomes people with criminal records. They're very intentional about it, but their law school will not, even though it's not really like there's still another test later to be able to become a practicing attorney in Illinois with a criminal record. So why should the school create that barrier when there are later barriers to have? Yeah. Thank you, Mickey, for sharing that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what, Paul? You know what happened to me? So when I was while I was in college, we had to have an interview for uh inter apprenticeship. And so when they interviewed me, they was like, well, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to let you complete this because you're going to have a problem with your quarry. And I was like, what do you mean I'm gonna have a problem? The charges that I had wasn't, they wasn't charges that could stop me from getting anything. And so
Yeah.
she's like, well, your Corey, we can't really let you go with your Corey. We don't want you to complete the class and then your Corey shows up. And I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna take that chance. I'm gonna complete the class. And Paul, you know what I did? Y'all know what I did? I went and I applied for the job that was doing the internship. I applied, and guess what happened? I got hired. I got
I
hired,
love it.
and I went back, and I was like, you know what? Like, if I had listened to them, it would have been a discouragement. I would have never did it, but I was so fired up. I was so fired up when first got home because I was so tired of hearing no. And I was like, Lord, I want to do it gracefully. Just let me do it gracefully. Yep. And so,
Norma, you make
how
me
you
want
like
to
me now?
end. You make me want to end this with one more story. Are we okay on time,
Okay,
Judith?
go for
Can we
it.
go a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm all
Um,
like, yeah.
that's okay. So, for y'all who are not aware, look up Calvin Duncan in New Orleans. Calvin Duncan
Duncan.
he is the Duncan, Duncan. He is the newly elected clerk of the criminal courts for New Orleans Parish, which is the very office that hid his criminal records for 30 years while he was falsely incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. He is out. He has finished law school. He's a lawyer, and he just won with 68% of the vote as the clerk of the
Yes.
very criminal court system that, listen, they had to go to a landfill and dig through garbage to find his criminal records. That's what the clerk's office had done with his records that they said they couldn't find. So for that man to have broken through barriers in that way and take that office is something I can't tell you how excited I am. And by the way, at the same time, New Orleans also passed the Fair Chance Amendment, I believe it's called, which creates a protected class for people with arrest or conviction records. They can no longer be discriminated against by the parish of New Orleans or their contractors in hiring. So that's about 900 Louisiana companies who do business with New Orleans who now can no longer discriminate based on criminal records for employment. Good stuff.
Nice.
As hard as these problems are, as entrenched as these systems are, when people who are directly impacted band together and work together on
Yeah.
solving these problems, it is very clear that we can make progress.
Yes.
So we are at 5 minutes past. I know this conversation is phenomenal. And again, I also have a few more questions that I will be following up with you, Paul. And I apologize about saying doctor, but definitely you have the qualifications in your space and your expertise. So I'll stick to that part of it. But yeah, I want to thank you for your participation. I want to thank you for the knowledge that you've brought to us here. Phenomenal job, phenomenal work. And you mentioned some really awesome organizations out there, partner organizations out there that are doing some phenomenal work as well with Andrea, with, Just Leadership. We've collaborated with them in the past as well. So just to say that this is a movement that we're all part of, right? And we are so much more connected than not. And one of the things I love about Unlock Higher Education is that we bring everybody to the the table, right? We bring everybody to this space. We bring everybody to, so that we can learn the work, the phenomenal work that is being done out there. And if there's one thing that we are about dismantling is the silos. And so that's why I feel that, this is an awesome space. And I am just glad that you guys were able to be part of it today. And I am so grateful for Paul for imparting his work, and so many things resonated, especially coming home during the pandemic. I was there as well. And with bittersweetness, I was there, and I enjoyed the fact that I had my family much closer than I would have been on a open society environment. And so, but with that, I thank you guys. Just to be reminded that we have the Horizon conference coming up next year. We have the NCHAP in April as well. If you have not looked into participating, I urge you to do so. This is a grand space where so many doing some great, wonderful work come together to brainstorm, to synergize, to network, to learn from each other, and also be reminded about our CWAC. If you are not a part of it, I urge you to be part of it. I think that there's some phenomenal work being done in each of your particular states. And what we're providing is that unison, right? That space where we can all come together to talk about that work that is being done and feel supported and figure out best practices. That's why some of my questions surround it, like what are the best practices? Because really that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see how we can get that great work that's being done in a particular space and spread it out across the nation, right? And so that we are learning from each other, and that we also feel that we are supported by others. We're not alone in this work. This is hard work. This is low to conquer work. That was my other question about, when did you move from barriers to just the whole entire background? Because this is hard work, and I don't want anybody to feel discouraged. We're going through some changes in this space, and I want all of us to feel supported, but also to acknowledge those small wins that are so impactful in this space. Any small little win in this space and this hard work counts. So thank you for all those small wins that you were able to share with us. And we can certainly learn from them, and we will be reaching out.
Amazing. I'll
Yeah,
put in a last plug. I also executive produced the Movement Mixtape Volume 1, all formerly incarcerated artists, producers, beat makers, and that is available on 23 streaming platforms. So whatever you use to listen to music, please check out Movement Mixtape Volume 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.